Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz, that's the difference. She is unique.
Annie Leibovitz. Annie Leibovitz. Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz? That Leibovitz woman.
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz.
Oh, what am I supposed to say when people ask me these questions about, you know, your commercial work or your magazine work versus this work or that work? I would like to break down those walls.
Yes,
I would like to
exactly.
say, I'm a photographer,
Exactly.
and this is my work,
Exactly.
and that some of it is this, and some of it is this. And, you know, and 2 important people to me died, but I've had 3 births. It's an amazing time.
Really great photographers can't stop taking pictures. They do it like other people eat and breathe. Her whole life is a subject.
Whether I'm on assignment or whether it's my family or, you know, whether it's like, you know, my toes, you know, or, you know, in a foreign land, or, I mean, it's just, it's interesting to keep recording and seeing what a life is, you know.
What is a photographer's life?
It's just a life looking through a lens. Great, that's great. Hey, oh, this camera. The man whose picture I have to take, George Clooney, is going to be here, and I'm going to have to talk to him. And as soon as he goes away, I can spend some more time with you. Okay, let's take the jacket off. It's not working. That's great. And look out towards these girls again. That's good. That's good. Actually, that's great. Great. That's great.
That was fun. See you guys later.
You know, it hasn't stopped being a ride. Everything is chock full of interesting moments. It feels more dynamic than ever now. That's why it's been very hard for me to have to say no to doing some things, which is why I was always running myself and everyone who worked with me into the ground, you know. Thank God, you know, the children, so at least there's some sort of pacing. We get everything really organized, which is going to be sort of a miracle before we shoot this, you know, this morning. Too even to me, you know. I mean, it's all the same density, and I wish it had more, you know, openness. So, Kirsten, we're going to keep this hair. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yes, Clementine. Thank you. Go ahead and look down towards Kirsten. Yeah, just a little bit there. That's great. Sorry, I can't help myself. It looks so great. Before. You know, the thing is, I'd like the red shoe better. Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. I'm going to do several kinds of formats here. So this looks incredible. Hold on. I'm going to another format. Jason, just lean over it, like arch your back a little bit there. Yes. Okay. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. Oh, fantastic. Hold on. Thank you very much. Bravo. You should have told me before.
Like frustratingly fast because we're like got all done.
I know.
Oh, it's incredible. Wow.
The white pants make it all. So sexy, the white pants.
Yes, you know.
Woo! That's right. I saw him sit down in his white pants, and I went, woo! I'm just confused because that's the. It's so beautiful. It's true. I should have shot more.
She's such an enthusiastic mother, and how she does it, I don't know. It's with the 3 kids and this work, and and she's in such a demand and pressures.
Go back to the very beginning of the genesis of Annie's book. The setting was important because it was at her house on the Hudson. And I was in the barns. And the physical space really determined a lot. She walked into this enormous and wonderful building.
You just said hi.
This wall is the personal wall.
Mm-hmm.
And this wall is the magazine work. I was dying to sort of start putting them together, but I really wanted to wait for you. I realized how many pictures I had, and I realized I can't even, if we do this book, how big can this book be?
This is just very, very, very beautiful.
This was a thing I did with Laurie Anderson. But there was this Chris Rock picture, which I sort of,
yes,
I couldn't believe I got away with.
She put such a stamp on a picture. I mean, you can look at her work, and there's no way anyone else ever took that picture.
For me, Annie is, if I had to select one word to describe her, is that she's daring.
She is the tallest and the most authoritative, uncertain person I've ever seen.
Trying to please the magazine, trying to please the advertising client, trying to please the reader.
She persuades, she cajoles, she seduces.
Annie has this freaky connection to quality that seems to have survived her commercial success.
Some of the greatest works of art ever made have been made as commissions for specific clients. We just have to think back to the Renaissance, the great age of the Medicis.
In terms of photography, if you were involved in rock and roll, she was the person.
She evolved into this portrait photographer, this sort of American portrait.
She has really been a major chronicler of our country, what we care about, what we think about.
I like the family pictures. We all live in a world where we have mothers and fathers and lovers and children and loss and death and hope. And at the same time, you have a series of portraits of these kind of monsters and these giants and these figures shifting around in the background or appearing on CNN. Bill Gates, Bush, Clinton, power at the White House, Star Wars. And they impose themselves on our lives. And so we just started to weave them together.
This is a trip with Susan to Germany. And Susan is not feeling well, feels concerned. Susan always talked about returning to Paris, and she started to go with me on these trips.
Mm-hmm.
And this is definitely a dilemma. We have this stuff, and then we also have the Bush administration stuff, which you saw, the war room and all that stuff. And I mean,
I think it's important.
Do we put it in or we don't put it in?
I think it's quite important. They're interweaving anyway.
Who's here? Hi. Who's coming? You? No. We don't. Yeah, we don't. Hey. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you for my visit.
Then why did you want to do this interview in the car?
This is like the Mom and Dad's Last Station wagon. To me, means a lot about family. It means a lot to both of us.
We had this huge family. I'm first, and then there's our brother Howard, and then there's Annie, who's the third, and Paula, and Philip, and Barbara.
I've always liked cars. You get in the car and drive, and your body was sort of taken care of, and your mind was just free to just sort of float along.
We were traveling from Air Force Base to Air Force Base. We moved from place to place to place. The family in the car was the stable unit.
We lived in our car, practically speaking. We slept in the car, and Dad and I would take turns driving.
When you're raised in a car, it was easy to become an artist because we saw the world through a ready-made picture frame, which was the frame of the car window. That was how you saw the world.
I didn't really have any real interest in photography. Photography to me was really family-based. We had family pictures and they were very, very sentimental to me. And they were important to my mom. She had them on the wall everywhere.
My mother was prolific in compiling documentation of our family.
We're just so used to it, and we were used to it at all different times.
We just thought that the camera was another member of the family.
In the late 60s, the Vietnam War, all of this country in turmoil.
It was this huge rift in our family to have our father in Vietnam and all of us marching against the Vietnam War.
My father was stationed in the Philippines. I didn't really want to go there. My father actually had to come and drag me to the Philippines. I bought a camera. It had a little needle inside, and you would line the needle up, you know, and when it was in the circle, then you knew that, you know, it was the correct exposure. I started to use the base darkroom. It was like, you know, the hobby shop. I mean, I didn't know what else to do. And I took pictures on the base and around the base. Those are my first pictures. When they wanted me to go to the University of the Philippines, I managed to talk them into letting me stay in San Francisco and go to school there.
I was living in Berkeley at the time, so my parents felt like it was safe for Annie to come to the San Francisco Bay Area, you know, in 1967. She got together with a bunch of friends and rented an apartment crammed with students, and her room was the closet.
I went to the San Francisco Art Institute as a painting major. I had it all figured out. I was going to become an art teacher. But I learned very early on that you can't become an art teacher till you become an artist, you know, and it was this, I said, really? The following summer, I took a workshop in photography. They asked you to go out that morning, take pictures, develop them in the darkroom that day, and that night you were sitting and looking at what you did and talking about it. You go out and walk around, and the immediacy of it, there was like a shared community wash where your prints came out, and you wanted to make sure that if your print was out there with everyone else's, it was okay and it was good. It was something really just wonderful about the whole process. It clicked. It clicked with me. Sorry. The School of Photography at the San Francisco Art Institute was really based on Robert Frank, who was considered the father of 35mm photography in the United States, and Cartier-Bresson, who represented the same kind of photographer in Europe. They were considered the first photographers who took photography in a way it had never been done before. They made it portable, very, very portable, very, very relaxed, very, very fluid, because they had a small camera. And this is how I learned to take pictures. It was personalized reportage work. The very first book that I began to realize what it meant to be a photographer was a Cartier-Bresson book, and it was called The World of Cartier-Bresson. I remember sitting down, looking at that book, and seeing that you could travel the world. The camera gave you this license to walk out and be alone in the world, but you know you were there with a purpose. It was a very important discovery. Every shoot has its different dynamics. You're not always trying to get the same things from every shoot.
Remember they had the beautiful shots of her here?
Yeah. He's gonna be upset with it, probably. He's gonna kill us. How much do those horses cost?
I had him was going to bring two horses over.
I said I didn't really need the horses. Definitely need fans. 2 fans. Hey, Ricky, we got 20 minutes of light.
Take all the films as soon as you can get them ready.
I was supposed to be there when the movie was actually being made. That didn't happen. We had to sort of recreate the film. Oh, fabulous. Oh, my God. Jason, you come here. And did you bring your mask? This is the carriage they could get at the last minute. And, well, watch your hair. Excuse me, sir? Do you speak English? Come down here. Everyone looks amazing. You okay?
Chris, I need Chris.
The camera's not working.
Chris, we need a good phone today, say.
It's not working. Is it on lock? Is it on lock? Oh my God, it was incredible. Okay, that's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, great, great, great. Great, let's go home. Yay! Woo! Bravo! And happy birthday. Oh, thank you. It's suspended with you. Oh, no. No, it was. Okay, have a good one. Okay. We'll see you later in the afternoon tomorrow. Good. That was the most beautiful life. That was sort of anticlimactic. That just wasn't good enough for what it was. I mean, you know, but it was like, why don't we just put it over here? Oh, God. Oh. I came out of San Francisco, and everything was about trying to make it a better place, and love, 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 and I don't say that lightly. I still believe in all that.
Well, my name is a number.
We started reading Rolling Stone, and it got me very interested in what was happening in the late 60s and the underground and the hippies and all that.
It was the magazine of its time. It was a magazine of, you know, of the culture. We grew up together.
Her boyfriend at the time drove her to the front door of Rolling Stone magazine and practically pushed her inside.
What's it like up there at Rolling Stone? What are the people really like? What's the big story there?
Hello, Rolling Stone.
Annie showed up at Rolling Stone one day with maybe a bag of pictures and met with the art director, and we ran a couple.
This is John Lennon, I'm the editor of Rolling Stone.
It was all run by people her age or just a little older and all kind of, you know, nothing super professional. 1966, 67 was the birth of the San Francisco rock and roll scene. You know, it was the Dead, and Jefferson Airplane, and there was just ferment in the air. And it's from there this kind of scene grew, and it's out of that Rolling Stone came.
To Al Green and Rolling Stone.
There was this special talent in the Tom Wolfe.
There was one thing I liked was the fact that about Rolling Stone was that he obviously just writes your head off.
Hunter Thompson.
Well, if I just need some speed, no. But we want to be moderate, you know, and just do a half.
We were all working for something we really believed in. We were the only paper really describing what was going on, and there was a lot going on back then. We were all really interested in the idea of experimenting with our art and experimenting with everything we did.
I never thought about doing that before.
She had all this energy, she had all this imagination, she had a great journalistic sense, and I immediately had the hots for her.
When I started to work for Rolling Stone, you were suddenly working with other people. You know, an art director, you know, working with a writer. It was a whole other landscape. The magazine is this extraordinary empty canvas that is waiting to be filled up with imagery. I remember the first time I saw my very first cover. That moment has stayed with me forever. It's just like so powerful to see this image replicated over and over and over again and on newsstands. It's very powerful stuff. I learned very early on that something that wouldn't seem like it was anything would be something. And I enjoyed that aspect of it so much. I never liked to presume something about a story or a person until I got there. I really do love working for the magazine. I get to travel. Mobility is like my goal. As long as I can move, as long as I can keep moving, I'm happy.
She was collaborating with people who shaped her world and influenced her because she was a music fan. People who spoke to her. I was going to New York to do this interview that I spent 2 or 3 years working on setting up and getting to know John and Yoko. John Lennon had never, ever given a real in-depth interview about what it was really like in the Beatles. And he was ready to tell a story. And Annie came and said, I want to come along and shoot it. It wasn't my idea that she come shoot it. Annie just begged to be a part of it.
This was like one of the first really big musicians that I was ever going to meet, and was dying to go. And I said, please let me go with you on this. I'll stay with some friends and I'll fly a youth fair.
She was like a student still, very young and sweet. And I thought, oh, this is interesting that Jan did not get some famous photographer.
He had no airs about him, and I think I was in such awe that someone being just nice to you or normal, being allowed to be there, that was a big deal. It did set a precedent for me of what you should expect.
She was more concerned about the spirit, I think, and that came through.
I really didn't know how to direct anyone to do anything. I was taking my meter reading. He just looked back at me for a second, and I took a picture at the same time. I was really taking a meter reading.
She just had this portrait of him, which was stunningly powerful. It wasn't an act of genius on my part to see it, and Annie certainly, after I pointed it out, saw it. You know, I was dead set on it. That was going to be the picture. Knowing that you had this talent, to nurture it and make it happen, I gave her the space. You know, it was an obvious thing to do. And she just did all that work. I guess it was part of that apprenticeship, and it was constant.
It sort of left me to my own devices. I was never, ever told what to go do.
I felt that she was really good to go out with from a journalistic standpoint because she really did observe things well. Little ticks and the feelings of the place in a way that I might not have caught.
They really didn't understand photography so well. It was certainly not as important to them as the story. I covered everything for Rolling Stone, and Rolling Stone covered everything. It wasn't just a music magazine.
She worked with Tom on the astronauts. Tom was doing the right stuff. We'd send her out on a campaign trail, ride the train with McGovern, go cover Watergate.
Annie Leibovitz, our staff photographer. She's around. She just got back from Hawaii.
Annie would work with all the writers. Hunter Thompson, she worked quite a bit. She and Hunter were fast friends and recognized in each other that wild and spirited nature of each other.
To compare Nixon to Hitler, yeah. I'd done that a long time ago, but I felt respectable.
I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body.
When Richard Nixon resigned, which we'd all been rooting for, we wanted to go with something, you know, a major issue. Well, unfortunately, the only copy that had been signed really was Hunter Thompson's story, and he didn't file.
Finally, Hunter got what he wanted. Nixon was gone. He just got blocked up, and he couldn't write the piece. That was a big triumph. Like, in place of Hunter's words, they ran, you know, they ran a big photo essay. And you know, I was like one of the last journalists they let in the White House. And Nixon's walking down the red carpet and gets in the helicopter. Everyone had pretty much moved away. I was still out there, and I noticed that the guards were rolling up the carpet. It's not the kind of picture that anyone else had room to run or would be interested in running. A lot can be told from what happens in between the main moments.
Annie just went in there with no particularly special access, delivered this beautiful set of pictures of this event. She started to get to a little star status within the office. You know, not quite equal to Hunter, but near that.
In order to do the best possible kind of photograph for what it is that I'm in right now, I really have to be in it. It has to be around me. Like, you know, like that is the best kind of photography, is what is around you. You know, like you become part of it.
What Annie would do was she'd spend 2 or 3 days on the road with the person, 2 or 3 days in their life. It was Fleetwood Mac or the Allman Brothers, she'd be on the bus with the Allman Brothers for 3 or 4 days and achieve a level of understanding and depth. That's what makes these photographs that she did so intimate and so revealing.
In order to get the best possible pictures, one had to become part of what was going on. You know, just do everything that was going on. And then you're there and no one pays you any mind and you can take the pictures you want to take.
At that time, we were all doing lots of oddball cultural things, poorhouses in Nevada, you know, any kind of subculture, slice of life thing, and certainly this was a window into that culture we didn't know much about.
I met Annie the first time on a flight down to South Africa in 1975 when I went down to compete in a Mr. Olympia competition. Annie is a person that is very good in adapting to the circumstances and to the people that are around. So she was very quick in adapting to the bodybuilding world. She knew how to talk to the bodybuilders and she knew how to make you feel good. She always has a way of kind of sneaking in and becoming part of your life. All of a sudden, you didn't even notice that she was taking pictures and recording the whole thing. No matter where it was, there was Annie, but you didn't really say, get her out of here, she's in my way. You always felt like she's one of the gang.
Of course, I was worried about Anna Lou being with the Rolling Stones at the time.
My advice to her in the first place was, don't go on tour with the Rolling Stones. It was such a seductive opportunity. You know, the world's greatest rock and roll band, the high life, rolling the dice at the top level, and, you know, it was irresistible.
The thing is that the Stones pictures are so gorgeous this time. Yeah.
We should have pictures like that all the time.
Shoot it, for sure, but don't go. I mean, I've got too many friends go on tour and come back drug addicts.
I didn't know what I was getting myself into. It was unbelievably stupid to pick that group of men in that situation to decide to sort of become part of something.
You know, we were all drugging it up and hanging out. My point was, go on some of it. Don't go on the whole thing at your own peril.
Photographers used to attach themselves to you. In those days, people were much more free and easy than they are now. They didn't mind, and no one asked, and nobody cared as long as they got on with everyone. It was like, blah, you know, it was okay.
She was one of the first female photographers that I remember. Well, it made a change from another bloke, you know. This is interesting, see how long she lasts. You know, but she hung in, and that was the other big surprise, I think. We thought she won't last long, you know. Being together every day, day in, week out, she became very unobtrusive, you know. You didn't think anything about Annie walking around going, you know. She'd find things that most people wouldn't get around to, you know.
She was around a lot, you know. She was around socially too, because I remember there's a picture here where I cut myself in a restaurant in Montauk, put my hand through the door accidentally. And then I had to go to the hospital in Southampton to get stitched up, and she was still taking pictures of me, you know, being stitched. My scar, it's kind of gone away a bit now, but there it is.
No, let me see it for a moment. Oh, that one I don't remember. No, I certainly don't remember that one. But that's what I mean. See how she can see things that I can't.
I'm called a hit and run, rainbow.
After about 10 concerts, you're getting about the same pictures. After about 10 hotel rooms, you're getting about the same pictures. So there wasn't that much new to be gained. And frankly, I thought the situation was very destructive. And it played to the most self-destructive elements in Annie. There's tons of drugs around. At that time, it was in their huge drug period.
I did everything you're supposed to do. You know, when you go on tour with the Rolling Stones, I mean, just imagine everything you can possibly do, and I did it.
We had a big tussle over a disagreement about her doing that, which I was against.
Oh, so it was her idea, was it? I never knew whose idea. I thought it was maybe his idea, and he sort of said, "You're assigned to this," or something like that. Okay.
But, she got something out of it, and she's got a lifelong friendship with the Stones out of it, and a great reputation, and she's, was I guess by this point, just the unquestionably the #1 photographer in our rock and roll world.
Have you done it so much that you could go in and blindfold and make cover photos for Rolling Stone and Mick Jagger?
I would never go into anything like you said, like what you just said. I mean, I wouldn't. I really take everything pretty seriously.
She certainly conveyed something from behind the stage or in the pit, and something which had never really been seen before. And the movement that she captured, I thought, was really fantastic.
A tremendous amount of footwork in your feet. Well, I guess it goes all the way up. I've always been interested in dance, and I'm sure it comes from my mother being a dancer.
Started with Isadora Duncan style of dancing, and then went into more modern with Martha Graham. Anna Lou had her dance classes too. I promoted art as much as I could.
There were these images of Martha Graham with her leg lifted up. As I got older, I realized, though, these were Barbara Morgan photographs, and I started to study how Barbara Morgan took those pictures. She really studied the dance, and then she picked some moments and she recreated them.
I'm photographed all the time, I'm sorry, and I'm comfortable being photographed, but I'm very specific. I'm very careful not to look like a complete fool. If I do, it's on purpose. The first time I worked with Annie was a double portrait session, me and Mr. Mikhail Baryshnikov, who's a very good dancer himself.
Actually, I got to know Annie through Mark, because she was attending all his rehearsals.
I always had a dream, I guess really based on the Barbara Morgan-Martha Graham relationship, really looking for, how is a dance made?
We were very busy. Mark was doing a few new pieces, and during the rehearsals she shot her material. After a few days, we really kind of forgot that she was there.
There are lots of pictures in this sequence that look like nothing. They look like, where's the focus of this picture? There isn't a classical triangle or a, point of view and depth of field, blah, blah, blah. There's just people kind of dancing. One has everybody's sort of slow dancing, and it looks like a dance marathon, and everybody's exhausted, which you are if you're a dancer.
That was one of the best times of my life. I mean, no, I'm serious. No, Misha, it was really, such an important...
Late dinners and so much fun.
It was fantastic. The thing about a photograph is that you are doing a heightened moment or a moment. This is truth. Right here, us. This is not true. This is kind of a little note, a little letter. I began to sort of understand that dance couldn't be photographed. How wonderful that it couldn't be photographed. There was something beautiful about coming to that place and realizing that you were just kind of doing a portrait of a moment. It was this art that lived in the air. I've never done any aerial work over the city itself. I've been on the river, but not in the city, so it'd be interesting. The light is not fantastic, so I'm not going to... It's really more reconnaissance.
Well, it's a great way to see the city, you know? Oh, my God.
Today, Rolling Stone started moving into its new digs more than 20 stories up, across the street from the GM building, the Plaza, and Bergdorf's at 58th and 5th.
The decision had to be to consolidate the company. You can't run it, split in half. And as to where? California and New York. New York is where publishing is. New York is where the talent pool is that we need.
The ideas, the intelligent ideas, and the photography in magazines seemed to be coming out of New York and Europe. I wasn't really looking at the fashion as much as I was looking at portraits.
Pull out a little wider here, north. Okay.
What began as an underground magazine in 4 small rooms in San Francisco 4 years ago has now grown to almost 40 rooms on 4 floors on Fifth Avenue, some of the most expensive office space in New York.
When Rolling Stone decided to move to New York in 1978, it might as well have been Oz. I mean, it was just so far away. I thought, I'll go for a year. I'll just see what that's like for a year. I never thought I was going to end up in New York City and be here this long.
If we were going to be a part of the mainstream magazine business and be able to grow, we really had to move out of San Francisco and move to New York. Everybody had to grow up.
When you were in New York, you were thinking this is where Richard Avedon, lived, and this was his town, and it was his work, and Avedon represented New York to me.
So I brought Annie up to Dick's studio, and we all had lunch together. Dick was trying his best to, be polite and engage Annie, and Annie was her usual, very nervous self. And it was funny that each of them had their cameras, and each of them took a picture of the other person, and she was just horrified that he was taking her picture.
I happen to think that the cover idea that we've evolved now, which is shooting against the wall, white, seamless, is fantastic. And we're going.
It looks great.
I intend that to continue with this style for the indefinite future on everything, and make this a style of Rolling Stone covers. I love it. It looks beautiful.
That's why they have to always shoot on white, because as long as it's a consistent style, I think it will do the same thing.
Moving to New York was like hitting a wall, like hitting a brick wall. That everyone who worked for the magazine, thought we were sort of a moving ensemble, that we were all going to be able to support each other and help each other, but everyone had so many of their own problems to deal with that it made it very hard for anyone to support anyone else.
New York's a fun place, but it's hard, and if you get off the track the least little bit, it's a serious derailment.
There wasn't any kind of support system set up for anybody to, moving there. It was sort of letting children loose in a big city.
Annie needed more attention and more help and broader experience than we were then able to provide. She needed a teacher. And she found Bia.
Bia was already a legend from designing magazines and books. She knew
practically every really talented photographer and designer in New York and perhaps the world.
Bea Feidler took me under her wing. She was very, very, very important at that period. She said, you have to edit your work. You really have to edit your work. And I didn't understand how she did it. I would look at my contact sheets for 5 hours, trying to, with my loop, trying to figure out which one, and she could look at the contact sheets and 3 minutes she would have it edited. She knew what was the best one. I didn't understand how she do that. How did she do that? I don't know how did she know?
That's one of the greatest learning experiences you can have, is to take your own work, have somebody who you respect look at it, and then figure out why do they like these 5 and not the other 500. And you learn a lot if you can figure that out. Because it's about lighting, it's about pose, it's about attitude, it's about what you're trying to accomplish in the shoot.
I have a good example of when I did something wrong. It was a group cover with Bruce Springsteen and James Taylor and Bonnie Raitt and Jackson Browne and Carly Simon. I think it was an anti-nuke rally. Jan wanted to put them all together, and I went and took the pictures and just kind of threw everyone against the wall and took their picture and came back with the film to Bea, and she looked at me and she was just so angry. She said, you really messed up. I mean, here was this, you had this opportunity, and you could have made something of this. You could have made it a very important photograph. You could have done something that would have taken this thing to another level, and you wasted that opportunity. It was a very, very important lesson. That one has to, just take it to another place, and you can make it something that means something to other people.
She started investigating what other photographers had done over the years and concept stuff and bringing in process, and she just brought this wonderful thing to it, which was that a concept somehow, was going to be deeply connected to something about this person, or something that suits this person. I remember sitting around thinking all the time about what to do, how to do it. I linked that to her picture of Bet on the bed of roses.
We were doing promotion for the rock and roll movie called The Rose. She put me at ease when I came in, and she explained the shot to me, and of course by that time I was a little bit big for my britches, and I thought, well, I'm not so sure about this. I saw that there were a lot of roses, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be scratched to death.
These are just flower market roses, and they came in all thorned, and there was a last minute hysteria because I couldn't have her lie down in thorns. And we were sitting there with clippers trying to de-thorn these roses, before she came in.
And I looked, and there were so many thousands of roses down on the ground. And I thought, oh, she removed every one. Oh my God, she's so thoughtful. And then, of course, I was her slave.
I get a letter a week after things comes out from Avedon saying, Dear Jan, Annie's cover of, Bet is the best solution for a magazine cover I've seen in 30 years.
I think that Bette Midler was a very important picture because it was the beginning of trying to think of how to do a setup photograph. What finally brought it home, strangely enough, was not an assignment from Rolling Stone, but an assignment from Life magazine to do a series of poets. Robert Penn Warren, for example, was writing about death, and I wanted to just take his clothes off, really, because I wanted to see underneath him. I wanted to see inside him. I wanted to see I wanted to see a skeleton. And Tess Gallagher wrote a great deal about horses and riding horses, and I started to sort of really understand that I could incorporate the poetry. I could incorporate something about the person into the imagery, into the photograph.
She kept doing that. I mean, Fleetwood Mac in bed on that mattress shuffle. It's brilliant. And they all had been having affairs with each other. So here, without saying it, here they all were in the same bed and twisted around, and this one with that one, and sheets. I mean, it was genius stuff. I mean, it sounds simple, but when you see it executed, I think of that Blues Brothers cover. The idea when I first heard it, paint their faces blue, I thought, we can do better than this. That's so, obvious and dumb. But done, one's done. It's stupendous.
There is something very narrative about her photography.
People do talk about those as being story portraits.
It's a story that's one sentence long. I mean, I really do think of them mostly as one-liners.
All the time they say, oh, you've got such great ideas, great ideas. She says, I don't have great ideas. I have stupid ideas. I have very basic ideas, very simple ideas.
She made portraits of people which seemed to derive from a very carefully considered idea, a graphic concept, perhaps a concept that has a degree of humor, irony built into it. Her way is to approach the idea of her subject.
Sometimes it was deeply connected to the personalities, and other times it was kind of a gloss, but done with such style and simplicity.
She decided that I would be standing in front of a oil can, I think, in flames. It was getting very, very, very hot, and I thought, boy, it must be like 120 degrees. But that was because I was starting to get singed. And the caption was something like, Patti Smith catches fire. So I think the concept was I'd burst upon the scene.
People were looking forward to seeing Annie Leibovitz's pictures in Rolling Stone in a way that had never really happened with photographers and magazines before. It was like installments from, you know, a cliffhanging Dickensian novel. What was Annie going to do next? You know, what incredible idea was she going to come up with? Who was she going to photograph?
Love is real.
The whole idea of the conceptual cover is everything that I had learned over the 10 years in between. I remember Yoko and John being, you know, like parents, being proud of me. They felt it was great that I had come as far as I'd come, and they both remarked that, and it was very, very sweet.
I was happy because it was the height of intimacy for both of us around that time. It was not like, we had a fight and we have to look like smile to the camera or something. We were just really feeling good about being together. Well, some photographers would just come in and just, okay, let me do it this way. But no, she said, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think, kind of thing. And John was very pleased with that.
When you're working with somebody who's a very creative artist, and you know when it's good. You just know when it's good. Everything's a process. And what was interesting was that she said she'd take her top off, she didn't take her bottom off. And I said, oh, leave everything on. Like not really preconceiving, seeing the picture or anything. And then, he curled up next to her, and it was very, very strong.
John made a statement. I'm not afraid to do this. I'm not afraid to show my vulnerability. Because, he could have said no. I mean, that's not John's creative effort. It was Annie's creative effort. But John could have said, no, I'm not doing that, And he was right on there, with her. And said, okay, well, let's do that, And he did not mind showing himself naked, holding on to his women.
Love is living.
And we didn't know that a very heavyweight fate was waiting for us, only 4 or 5 hours later.
I left there and I got home and got into bed and then got a call from Jan to say that John's description, was taken to Roosevelt Hospital.
He died in the emergency room at Roosevelt.
The murder of John Lennon in New York.
Dead tonight at the age of 40.
You knew that was the cover, that was it. I mean, the most remarkable image you've ever seen. We went ahead and published a cover without a headline on it. There's nothing except the logo. There's no words that possibly could have said anything. The nature of the image just became sort of an overwhelming artifact, the Pieta of our times.
I had been at Rolling Stone for so long, for almost 13 years, and I was synonymous with Rolling Stone. I was asked if I would become the photographer for Vanity Fair, and they were quite happy to have me still working for Rolling Stone.
B.F. Feitler offered her that opportunity. It was her idea to bring Annie from Rolling Stone into a non-existent publication then.
I actually really wanted to work for both magazines. I thought, why wouldn't I want to? I didn't think Jan was going to say no.
Annie was in a peak drug use period. By that time, Annie had gotten so irresponsible in terms of leaving rent-a-cars everywhere, not turning things on time.
Working at Rolling Stone, it was a drug culture. Who were my mentors? Hunter Thompson, who was a total maniac and was never off drugs. And it certainly wasn't about trying to zone out. It was more about zoning in. And I think there was a great interest in cocaine because it propelled you, it kept you going, and it made you think you were thinking.
There's no stopping her. I didn't think I was going to be able to stop her. I certainly tried and everything, but you can't. We were happy to say, you know what, go to Vanity Fair. You need a big change of life. Get into a situation, not so many drugs. Get away from covering these kinds of people. Every time you go out, you're involved in that.
We got her into a very, very wonderful rehab place, and that cured her forever.
I got professional help, and it was done. And I just took a deep, deep, deep breath and moved on. It was like growing up. I needed to leave it to sort of understand what I could do and who I was.
Hi, Ian. How are you? Ricky, forget about putting that stuff up yet, because I just got to organize the place or it's not going to work for me. That table here, 6 of those chairs for now. Bring it over here and get everyone to hang up their coats. This thing, move back to this wall. This garbage can go to the left here, but I think we should move these chairs over. Can't work in a messy place.
When Annie made the leap from Rolling Stone to Vanity Fair, she herself was taking a big risk. She had been very much identified with the rock and roll world. For her to come to Vanity Fair, to come into the kind of glossy Condé Nast stable, was a statement by her, I am now taking my work into a more mainstream area.
Who's in charge of these seats?
Tina Brown put me to work, and she put me to work in a way that, I haven't really stopped working. She really, she used me nonstop. I wonder if Julia Roberts would wear something like that. Like she's like Mother Earth or something.
A lot of people will say to me, it looks like it would be so much fun just hang with your sister while she takes pictures. You do not want to be anywhere near when she's taking pictures because she's very focused and you just don't want to get in the middle of that.
I want to put him at her feet. Her feet. That's going to be George Clooney, so turn around.
She's very demanding. She can be very difficult. I like to think of her as Barbra Streisand with a camera.
Hi. Thank you. Hi.
Very often celebrities would say no because Vanity Fair had had a very checkered history.
Long laugh.
Annie's name was the open sesame to so many artists because they knew that they would get something extraordinary, that she would push them into doing things that they might not be able to do with anybody else.
Hi. Come to the garden, the mysterious garden. Woo.
George, God damn it!
Can't work with you, young man. Come here.
I'm not even in this shot.
No, yeah.
I'm operating the camera.
You're just on the ground, just like at her feet.
Again?
George, actually, you don't look very comfortable. Do you want to come right on your bottom? Come right on your bottom. Julia, just try your arms out on the. It's fantastic. Great. Okay.
Going from Rolling Stone to Vanity Fair, I didn't really have the tools to make people look good. I didn't quite understand there was a good side and a bad side. All that stuff seemed silly to me, that people should get dressed up. When you saw Jerry Garcia and he had on his t-shirt, you didn't think, well, hey, maybe you want to put on your, a suit or something.
Here we go. Hold on. Is the fan going? A little bit. Okay. George, now move your bottom over a little bit to your left. Julia, lean your bottom right into the wall there. There you go. And George, your bottom still has to go there a little bit. Yeah. And
The cover is kind of a thankless dilemma because the cover is not a photograph. I mean, you might as well be doing advertising. It really is designed to sell the magazine. And I am put in the position of having to take those pictures. But my work really lives inside the magazine. My real photographs are inside the magazine. There is every now and then a moment where it opens up and you can do the kind of work you really could only dream about doing. This is a portfolio done in '93. He was having a Victory cigar. He just moved in. And I said, would you smoke the cigar? And he said, in your wildest dreams, I'll smoke that cigar.
Yeah, should we try that?
Fantastic. I think she's so beautiful.
Absolutely.
She has this thing about her.
Stunning. This would be very nice.
Yes. You see how they work? I just like that Jamie Foxx is this, who got the Oscar. The kind of crudeness of it is really beautiful. You want to put it between the two women?
Yeah.
And then Julianne Moore really is the kind of this heightened reality thing. It's very Hollywood, strange picture.
We've got 3 or 4 threads that are running through. Mm-hmm. We've got the entertainment industry and we've got Hollywood and the magazine culture. Mm. We've got the personal narrative, the family narrative, we've got the primary relationship with Susan.
It was surprising to know that Susan and Annie were together, but it seemed right. As soon as you heard it, oh yeah, what a good idea. Susan Sontag was the premier female intellectual and one of a dozen intellectuals, period, in the United States for a long period of time.
When I met Susan, she needed publicity pictures. To do my homework, I read The Benefactor. I'm not a big reader, and I found it incredible because it just was like someone living inside their mind or their brain. And I just talked to her about it, and we just had a really, great time.
Susan Sontag wrote brilliant essays very early. Ironically, one of her most famous ones, long before she knew Annie, was on photography.
She knew how to have her picture taken. She knew herself very well, and she was very confident. And for a photographer, it was like she took the work out of your hands. She just turned herself on. Obviously, I was really taken with her. She just sort of decided that she was going to know me, and it was that was it. My reputation was Rolling Stone magazine, Vanity Fair, and popular culture. And what the hell was she doing with me? When I went to Vanity Fair, they came to me and said, we want you to be the Edward Slykin, of Vanity Fair, in the grand tradition of great portraiture. And there wasn't any kind of sense that it was going to be pop or hip or the way it turned out to be. But it totally went glitzy. Even the most set-up, stylized photograph is going to give you something.
It was a huge deal. And then she turned up and was like, hi. And she said, I'm going to put you in a tub of milk. I want to show that you are emerging from what was, which was all white. And I thought, honey, whatever you want, whatever you want. Cats followed me for weeks afterwards. And when that picture came out, everything changed, literally overnight. Where I was walking down the street on Friday night and just walking down the street, and Saturday morning people yelling my name.
When I did the Trumps, I had to do it tongue-in-cheek. Ivana Trump posing so hard, she looks like she's going to break off the chair.
The era of the Reagans and Dynasty era, heavy makeup and nails and the whole thing, everything very glitzy.
It's going to look real small.
But I actually love Ruth Westheimer really big.
Well, she's like the mad scientist, the mad analyst.
Like this one,
amazing.
but I like that other one.
Straight on one. We can always put her next to Don Johnson, thinking about sex.
Yes, this is what Ruth Westheimer thinks about at night. This is
magic.
Tina Brown, she had a brilliant way of mixing high and low materials. She was very interested in creating controversy. So Annie fit really well into that scheme.
We used to have great brainstorm sessions together where we would just kick it around. And I would think, wow, light bulb.
A single image can have a profound effect. I have as many people come up and respond about those covers as much as I have for films I've done. She's pushed me with the things that we've done.
If they're photographed a lot, they really want to do something that is different. It's nice to take the photograph a little farther.
I was huge pregnant. I had asked, can we do a nude for me?
We are people meeting to create a piece of work, and we're going to collaborate.
Well, as soon as the picture came in, and Annie said, why don't we just do it on the cover? I had no idea it was going to be the media explosion that it was. The cover kicked off a discussion of motherhood and discussion of the way women look. I mean, it still goes on, actually. That picture took us from 800,000 to 1 million, and it's never gone below that. For Demi Moore, it made her famous forever, actually.
When we say that this particular person caught our eye this week, we mean it literally. This is an astoundingly talented woman. She makes a difference in part because she provokes people.
Hi.
How are you?
I never would have thought I would be interested in fashion. You feel a little guilty. Is it okay if I go do that because I'm not really a fashion photographer?
Oh, wait. Just do a couple steps with it. You just see it walking backwards. It's so bizarre. Beautiful. Oh, my God. Ah! Come on a little front. Ooh.
I always thought that she was way too grand and important to want to work for Vogue.
She's having a funny bubble right there.
Yes, she drives us crazy, of course, and budget is not something that enters into her consciousness, but it's worth it because at the end of the day, she gives you an image that nobody else can, and she just cares so much. She cares.
That's beautiful. You will not believe this.
In today's world, which is so celebrity-driven, being able to use, Annie as one of our star photographers is a huge, huge plus for us. If you ring up Nicole Kidman and say, Joe Smith's going to photograph you, next month, a big yawn. If you ring up and say Annie Leibovitz wants to photograph you for the cover, she'll be there that night, with bells on.
Annie Leibovitz. Hey, Chris, stand there. Let's go right there.
Are you the biggest photographer in the world?
Yeah.
Do you have, rankings? Do you have the belts?
Almost every celebrated figure of our times knows an unassuming young woman with a camera named Annie Leibovitz.
From the Stones to the Trumps, photographer Annie Leibovitz has captured everyone who's anyone.
She is the apex of the image culture that is so fixated on celebrity, and she has catered to that. She has done it beautifully. But it's a shabby culture in the end.
I photographed all your wives. Beautiful.
The state of celebrity in America is at an astounding low point. In the old days, you had to be Peter Ustinov or Yehudi Menuhin to be famous. Now you can be on a reality TV show and be considered famous.
It's been the bane of my existence. Someone being so famous and totally relying on that versus trying to take a good photograph. I think they're winning. I think the famous people are winning. Okay, be famous.
Hi. Wow, look how beautiful. Relax one second. I'm just going to get Bryce up there.
I can't say that photographing celebrities didn't change my sister's viewpoint.
She just got sand in her shoe. Take the shoe off.
Just living in that world changes you.
Let's go. It's actually nice you looking a little to your left like that. Just That is so great. That's great. Thank you. We're done. Let's go. Woo! Fantastic. You can look a little bit out this way.
I had to find my own sort of way to do it, and part of it was, well, God, if you're using an actor, why not have a little story?
Hey, get the fan going. Get the fan going. Drop the tail. Well, Jeff, boy. Great, and come on down. Yay!
Little by little, month after month, it got a little bit more complicated with every shoot.
I'm afraid that's going in their, is that going in their eyes at all? Oh, here, that's fantastic like that.
Her demands became bigger. Fire, rain, cars, and airplanes, circus animals, whatever she wanted, she got.
Do the 3 fight song medley marching in place.
Here we go, here we go. Yeah, maybe in the hustle out, I think that's great.
There are a lot of photographers out there. They don't really suffer and agonize and obsess the way that Annie does.
Anyway,
They started in this business so young that all the other lives did seem much more exciting and adventurous. And you do sort of think you are living that life, and you forget to build your own.
The cause of women is a question of justice.
Susan was a really important person in my sister's life. They had a kind of emotional, intellectual bond that was really essential and important to both of them.
Susan, of course, was entirely a word person, and Annie is pretty entirely an image person.
They complemented each other.
I'm sure they could learn from each other and probably represented unexplored parts of themselves for each other.
I went into the relationship thinking that I wanted to be close to this greatness and to move my work to a better place.
Susan obviously is this huge intellect. She brought an intellect to Annie's work. She was able to talk about Annie's work, look at Annie's work, critique Annie's work, discuss Annie's work with Annie in ways that I don't think anybody had been able to before. And Susan loved Annie's work.
And Susan did want me to be more serious in my work.
I think Susan would make Annie feel that she wasn't an intellectual. I think it'd probably hurt her.
I mean, she would be really tough with Annie. And somehow Annie persevered.
I was very nervous about going because I just thought, well, that someone's going to say, what are you doing here?
First of all, I'm doing what I can and bearing witness.
Susan Sontag was involving herself so emotionally and professionally in Sarajevo and wanted Annie to go to Sarajevo and take pictures that almost echo back to Annie's beginnings, which are, in a sense, photo reportage, small cameras, not going with a big crew, just having an intimate relationship with the place and the scenes.
The thing they would suggest to you when you first arrived in Sarajevo is go to the morgue first. I mean, just so that you understood what was going on. It was war. It was war. Everything is stripped down to life and death. It was really so random. There was no rhyme or reason to living or dying. It was a real leveling experience. It sort of put some of the work that I do back into the correct perspective. Because I remember I had to go from being in Sarajevo right back to doing, Barbra Streisand and stuff like that. And suddenly, Barbra Streisand didn't seem so relevant. What side Barbra Streisand needed to be photographed from didn't seem, important.
You are working really hard, and before you know it, you're 50 years old, like Annie was, and you know, like, oh my God, I forgot to have children.
No more? Okay. I love raising my children. You know, I thought the world was flat before I had my kids, and now it's round.
Family is very important to her. We have this tradition of taking the family photograph. All of us lined up the way Annie tells us to stand and where she directs us to go. I just love those family pictures.
Taking pictures of my family and you know, people to whom you're close to is a privilege, and it certainly brings a certain kind of responsibility.
Sarah in big, Sarah in medium, Sarah in medium, Sarah in small. It's this picture.
Well, this is when Susan, several years ago, Susan was sick. She had a problem, and then she went to see the doctor, and he fixed it all up. Susan had gone out to Seattle for a bone marrow transplant. There was a very slim chance that it was going to work. I decided I was going to spend my Thanksgiving with Susan. And Susan was not doing so well, and then the call came that basically the bone marrow had failed. So I flew out and brought her home on that small jet. It was the first time I thought, I should take some pictures.
I could not be unaware of how charged and emotional it was for Annie.
The way Annie photographed people, she just told us who they are. Portrait photography had been around for many, many decades, and there had been photographers who had been celebrated as great portrait photographers, but Annie brought a totally different dimension to it.
She has no parallel when it comes to a portrait.
I didn't see the shot she picked till it came out, and I remember looking at the picture and thinking, is that what I look like? Because I looked at it, and the person that I saw, I wasn't yet familiar with. But as I've evolved as a human being, I've come to know that person that she saw in the shot.
Thank you.
She's famous for taking photographs of famous people, which she's done longer and better than anyone in the way that she has captured their character, their attitudes, their insecurities, but she's humanized them at the same time.
She came up with ideas of how to show these people, put them in a broader context.
I just don't buy into this idea that you captured someone. The fact that that's even thought of, that's what my job is to get them, or you got, I'm just bewildered by that. Life is just so much more complicated and so much bigger than this, one-dimensional moment.
Does Annie capture the essence of her subjects? No. Can you get to the inside of a person in a portrait? There are many photographers who've said you can't do it anyway.
Bob, look out to your right just a little bit. Right, come back to the camera.
You've got one fraction of a minute. You've got somebody who is behaving for the camera. You have the photographer's control of the situation. You have people who don't want to give you whatever they consider their essence. They want to give you a persona, which is something else.
What I'm doing as a photographer is getting a little tiny slice of them. I'm getting a little moment. You're there for a few minutes and you leave, and you're passing through each other's lives. When was that? That was just the beginning of this year. And I went down to say goodbye to Grandpa Sam.
And I flew down to Florida. I had a wonderful talk with my dad. And that's, you know, these set of pictures here. And then 2 days later, he died in his sleep. Remember we talked about how we go back into the earth, then back into the ground, and we become a part of the world again. And that's where Grandpa Sam went. He went back into the earth and the ground and the world, and was part of all the other parts of life. That's where he went. That's where Susan went too. Had Christmas with Susan in the hospital, and she died 3 days later.
I just shot with a digital camera.
Right. And I went home to print it on the little digital thing, and it came out all green and weird. But I sort of liked it, and that was just the contact sheet. Right. And then I went back and shot the Polaroids.
She certainly didn't flinch from the pain of the deaths that she went through, you know, the losses that she suffered. She didn't back up from that or avoid it or try to figure out how to get around it. She photographed it. I mean, that's amazing. She brought a sense of poetry to her loss.
Susan came, she was here, and she left. And I one more time, I left my work. You know, my work it turns out to be the greatest relationship of my life. I guess in the wake of loss, I mean actual loss, it felt comforting to take pictures. I feel very, very responsible to my work. I love the idea that it's gone over my whole adult life. I just think it's important to finish it out. You know, I want to be, you know, photographing, you know, the day I die. I'm looking all the time, and every direction I look, I'm framing. The personal pictures and the assignment work are all part of it. I don't have two lives. This is one life.
Will you remember me like the circled stones on the ancient hills where you walk alone, where the wind can speak my secret name like the air you breathe?
She's shooting me, and I had to go down quite far into the water and thrash about, and I was really sick, and I was in a kimono.
I can't begin to describe how cold it was.
Very, very cold. Freezing cold. It was snowing, it was a storm, it was terrible.
And I was like, I almost died.
Difficult or, you know, physically rigorous or like an outward bound experience or a survival camp.
It's just an odd feeling, you know, you hear of people being in milk baths and you think, oh, that must be really luxurious. It's not. And then dust starts to float in the milk. It's kind of nasty to look at after a while.
Sometimes it's just like, don't even bother. She looked at me, can you? I said, no.
And she would just keep saying, just remember this, that the freezing and the pain is all temporary, but this shot is permanent.
You guys were great! Thank you!